What's going on, everybody? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A14 5G and the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G. Now, as always, if you do want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Samsung Galaxy A14 5G, we're getting a 6.6-inch 90Hz PLS LCD display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 400, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. With the A53 5G, we're getting a 6.5-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED display. This phone also has a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 405, and a 20:9 aspect ratio as well. So these phones do have pretty similar displays, but on one hand, the A14 5G at 6.6 inches versus the A53 5G at 6.5 is a tiny bit larger. The difference isn't really huge, but it still is there. So if you are someone who prefers a larger display, then you might be better off with the A14 5G. On the other hand though, the A53 5G with a 120Hz Super AMOLED display versus the A14 5G with a 90Hz PLS LCD display does have a nicer image quality in general. A Super AMOLED is going to make the colors a bit brighter and more vibrant, and it also has significantly better viewing angles. So if you're outside in the sun, for example, the A53 5G is going to be quite a bit easier to see. And the higher refresh rate, while definitely not being a huge difference, is going to make the movement on the screen a bit faster and smoother, so the A53 5G is going to feel a bit more premium in general. But that's actually not to say the A14 5G has bad image quality. In fact, completely the opposite. It's actually one of the few entry-level 5G phones that does have a 1080p resolution, and with the 90Hz refresh rate, things are going to be nice and premium here too. And honestly, 90 versus 120 is not really that big a deal. So either way, if you are looking for a phone that has a really nice display, you're definitely not going to go wrong either way here. But if you want something a tiny bit larger, the A14 5G will have an advantage. But if you want slightly nicer colors, better brightness, and better viewing angles, the A53 5G will have an advantage. For storage, with the A14 5G, we're getting 64GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion. And with the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G, we're getting 128GB with microSD card expansion as well. So clearly here between the two, the A53 5G has a pretty big advantage, having double the storage of the A14 5G. So if storage is really important to you, maybe you're someone who has a lot of apps and games and stuff like that, or maybe you're recording lots of videos, for example, in that kind of situation, the A53 5G will definitely be a better choice. But honestly, for the average user, 64GB is really not terrible. So if you're not doing a ton with your phone, maybe you have a decent amount of apps and some photos and videos and stuff like that, but not a whole lot else. Although obviously the storage with the A53 5G is better, you're still gonna get by just fine with the A14 5G. For security features, both phones have Face Unlock, like pretty much any Samsung Galaxy A series phone does. And of course, they both have fingerprint scanners too. With the A14 5G, it's right here on the power key. And with the A53 5G, it's in the display. But starting with the A14 5G, let's give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the A53 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see there, they both worked real well. And again, both phones have Face Unlock too. So if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera setups here. With the Samsung Galaxy A14 5G, up front, we got a 13 megapixel selfie camera. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. For video, this phone has a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so unfortunately no 4K here. With the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G, up front, we got a 32 megapixel selfie camera. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 64 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixel macro camera, and a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera. Then for video, this phone has a max recording quality of 4K in both the rear and front cameras, so definitely nice here. So overall, both phones do have really good camera setups for what they are, but in pretty much every way, the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G does have an advantage. First of all, this phone again does have an ultra wide camera, whereas unfortunately, the A14 5G doesn't. And in addition to this, being able to record in 4K is definitely a nice thing, especially if you're maybe a content creator, or maybe you're just casually recording videos and you want to get that higher resolution. No matter what you're doing, at this point in 2023, having the option to record 4K videos is definitely a nice thing. In addition to this, aside from having a few more features, the photo quality with the A53 5G is just better in general. Now, it's not a huge difference. It's not like the A14 5G has a bad camera and the camera with the A53 5G is amazing. But at the same time, you definitely will be able to see a difference. So if you do want the higher photo quality between the two, then I would definitely go with the A53 5G. But again, the A14 5G definitely does not have a bad camera. In fact, considering this phone is under $200, the actual photo quality is pretty impressive. To give you an idea of what they can do, first, here are some pictures taken with the Samsung Galaxy A14 5G. For a really affordable entry-level 5G phone, the photo quality here is really impressive, and honestly for the average user, for things people typically use smartphone cameras for on a daily basis, like a couple Instagram photos here and there, sending photos to friends and family, using Snapchat, really anything you can think of, the A14 5G will get the job done. And sure, it's not nearly as good as a $1,000 flagship phone, but at the same time, I feel like the average user really doesn't need it. Sure, it would be nice if you have the money to spend on a $1,000 flagship phone, but again, is it really necessary for daily activities? Probably not. So for most people, the photo quality you're going to get with the A14 5G is going to be perfectly fine. And then here's some pictures taken with the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G. Again, I feel like the quality here is a little bit better, but at the end of the day, it's really the same kind of thing. Definitely not flagship level. If you compare this to something like the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, it's not going to be nearly as good. But at the same time, compared to the A14 5G, I feel like there is at least somewhat of a difference. So if you are taking a lot of pictures and the camera is just more important to you, but you still don't need absolute studio quality photos, then between the two, you will be better off with the A53 5G. And again, when it comes to video, don't forget, just in case you do want to record 4K videos, between the two, the A53 5G can do it, whereas the A14 5G can only record in 1080p. Now when it comes to RAM and processor, with the Samsung Galaxy A14 5G, we're getting 4GB of RAM, and depending on the version you get, you're either going to get the Exynos 1330 processor or the MediaTek Dimensity 700. This particular phone in my hand does have the Exynos 1330, but I think the version you get through pretty much any US carrier will have the MediaTek. But regardless, from what I've seen and heard, the performance between the two versions are going to be pretty much the same. And with the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the Samsung Exynos 1280. So overall, when it comes to performance, the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G is the faster device here, but honestly it's really not by that much. And this was definitely surprising because with the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, this phone's predecessor, for what it was actually more on the slower side. So I was kind of expecting the A14 5G to be faster, but not really that much faster, but with this phone it's actually pretty close to the A53 5G. So in general, for more basic daily activities, or more moderate stuff like some occasional mobile gaming, either phone will get the job done just fine. But if you're gonna be on your phone a bit more, you will get a slightly better experience with the A53 5G. Now I did run a benchmark test on each phone using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So again, as you can see here, on one hand there is definitely a difference, and I would say this does reflect my actual experience too, with the A53 5G being a bit faster, but again, as you can see here, it's really not a huge difference. So if you get the A14 5G and you're doing kind of the same stuff as you might with the A53 5G, it's still gonna get the job done just fine. But in general, the more you're on your phone, the more a little difference like this is gonna matter. So if you are someone who's on your phone a lot, again, you are going to get a slightly better experience with the A53 5G. Now for the battery, both phones have 5000 mAh batteries, with the A14 5G supporting 15W fast charging and the A53 5G supporting 25. When it comes to charging speed, there is definitely a bit of a difference. On one hand, the A14 5G isn't really slow to charge up, but the A53 5G, if you do have a 25W fast charger, will charge up quite a bit faster. So if that is important to you, definitely keep this in mind. But of course, since both phones do have 5000 mAh batteries, with either of them, you can expect to get some great battery life and longevity. So if that's important to you, then you're really not going to go wrong either way. For the software, both phones do have Android 13, the A14 5G came with it, and of course, being an older phone, the A53 5G did start out with Android 12, but it got the update to Android 13 in December. So if you're not really going to keep your phone for a super long time, then software-wise at least, these phones are pretty much interchangeable. I mean, they both have Android 13, and with Samsung software support, you can also expect several other major updates in the future. But that being said, keep in mind with the A14 5G being a year newer, it will get one extra update, getting Android 14, 15, 16, and 17, whereas with the A53 5G, it should be getting 14, 15, and 16. That one update might not be super important for everyone, but if you do tend to keep your phone for a longer time, the A14 5G will have a slight advantage. As far as other features go, both phones do have NFC, so if you like to use tap and pay, you'll be happy to know either phone can use that feature no problem. But also keep in mind, the A14 5G does have a headphone jack, whereas unfortunately, the A53 5G doesn't. So if you have a pair of wired headphones you like to use, and you don't want to get an adapter, then the A14 5G might be a better choice. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? In general, these phones are actually pretty close, but overall, if you want a lot more storage, a slightly nicer looking, more premium display, a slightly better camera that can record 4K videos, better fast charging, and a slightly faster processor, the A53 5G will be a better choice. But on the other hand, if you want a slightly larger display, maybe you're not too concerned about storage, so 64GB is okay for you. You just need a decent camera that works and you don't really care about the ultra-wide camera or 4K videos, and maybe you want a headphone jack and an extra update, then in that case, the A14 5G will be a better choice. But in general, if you're looking for an affordable 5G phone for more basic activities that has a nice camera, a large battery, and really good performance, you're really not going to go wrong with either phone here. But this concludes my comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A14 5G and the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about each phone, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalibus Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.